Well, this is going to be a fun one, isn't it? It turns out nobody believes in the Vancouver Canucks, and that's a conclusion that we were able to come up with courtesy of what The Athletic posted earlier this week. The Athletic asked fans, which teams are you most confident will not win a Stanley Cup before 2036? You've got a number of teams here: Edmonton, Winnipeg, Chicago, Seattle, Columbus, but out of the 19,424 responses, 15% of those answers were for the Vancouver Canucks, who had a 3% lead over the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are in second place. Now, how unfortunate is it that the top three teams are all Canadian teams? How unfortunate is it that literally, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the 7 Canadian teams are listed on here? Montreal is actually doing really well, so of course they aren't listed on the list. But the point is, people don't believe in the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm gonna be real when I say this, I get it. I get it. It's 2036. That's the timeline of how this question was asked to Athletic readers and supporters. Heck, if the Vancouver Canucks win the Stanley Cup before 2036, I might be the happiest guy on earth. But let's think about it for a second. So, sometimes it takes a while for franchise pieces to come into play and to actually allow your teams to win Stanley Cups. I think about the Tampa Bay Lightning, for example. They didn't win their first Stanley... Okay, well, they won their first Stanley Cup in 2004, but they didn't win their modern generation Stanley Cup until 2020, the bubble year. Guess what? They drafted Nikita Kucherov 9 years before that, in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just quickly verify that. Yeah, 2011, second-round guy. Vasilevsky, taken a little bit later, 2012. Guess what? The Tampa Bay Lightning, with their glory of tax prosperity and high payouts to players, they were not able to win themselves a Stanley Cup in the first 8 years after drafting Kucherov and Vasilevsky. It gets even worse when you look at Steven Stamkos. He was 2008. Victor Hedman was 2009. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, well, Tampa Bay, they made the Stanley Cup Finals in 2015, and they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks. Yeah, okay, fair game. They were a young team. They made it. They lost. They made it look easy. Losing, I mean. But that, I would say, is more of an anomaly than anything. They did become really good shortly after that. They made the Stanley Cup Finals after getting swept in round 1 by Columbus. Then they won 2 cups. Then they won enough to make it to a third straight Stanley Cup final before losing to Colorado. Hey, guess what? That Colorado Avalanche team. When was Nathan McKinnon drafted? He was drafted in 2013. And guess what? He wasn't even like the top young dude in Colorado for a long time there. Yes, he was first overall, but there was legitimate concern back in 2013 that Jonathan Drouin, for example, would have been the better prospect. Okay, maybe that's a little bit too far-fetched, but it was 13 years ago. You know who else the Avalanche had? And they were developing, and they were looking good and promising back in that time frame. They had Gabe Landeskog. They had Tyson Barrie. They had Matt Duchene. Nathan McKinnon was a guy who came onto a team of other young guys, and they weren't really all too great for a while. Then in 2017, they finished last in the NHL. And guess what happened? They drafted Cale Makar. Now, to be fair, Cale Makar is the best defenseman on the planet. A generational D-man, if you wanted to say there's 2 of them that exist on the planet today. And what? The Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup in 2022. 9 years after Nathan McKinnon, who is a franchise player now, was drafted. For the Vancouver Canucks, who are at the beginning of a rebuild and whose top-tier pieces don't necessarily have that Nathan McKinnon-like ceiling, sorry Braden Coots, sorry Caleb Malhotra, the Vancouver Canucks would be lucky to win a Stanley Cup before 2036. So in a way, I get it. Rebuilds are long. They take time. Some teams don't even get out of the rebuild phase and make it into the playoffs. Looking at you, Detroit. But to see this athletic pull get out there, and to see all these other fans pointing their fingers at the Canucks, all I gotta say is, well, duh. Like, duh. People don't believe in the Vancouver Canucks. Why should they? Look at their top players. Thatcher Demko can't stay healthy for crap. Philip Hronek's been in trade rumors. Elias Pettersson's been in trade rumors. Brock Besser's slow as molasses. We still love him, though. And Jake DeBrusk is probably going to be on his way out, too. These are the best guys in Vancouver, and they're all not a part of this long-term future core if you're going to say the Vancouver Canucks are going to win a Stanley Cup by 2036. You're probably looking at a much different team by then. Now, I do think it's fair to say the Canucks are the correct answer here, but what other teams go out there and stand out? Well, Toronto, they make a lot of sense, but guess what? Vancouver being ranked below Toronto in the most likely to win the cup race because Toronto has Austin Matthews. They've got John Tavares, who is genuinely still great, and then they just drafted Gavin McKenna. Guess what? They are getting first overall picks. Vancouver can't afford that. Literally. Vancouver can't afford to sacrifice anything to the hockey gods to get a first overall draft pick. Now, I say that crossing my fingers because I fully hope that that changes this upcoming season, but the Vancouver Canucks are in such a bad spot with the value of the guys that they have that a rebuild going down this path, obviously it was the necessary thing to do. It's just kind of unfortunate because you think about it, like 2 years ago, the Canucks had so much value. JT Miller was a 100-point player, making $8 million a year. We didn't see the cap explode in the ways that it has lately, but if JT Miller was just traded under better circumstances, like, oh, he's not getting traded because he bullied his teammate and he chucked an iPad at the wall, he's getting traded because we just want to see what's out there. Like, oh, okay, New York or Pittsburgh, y'all are interested in Miller? Well, it's going to take a big, nasty price to pry him away from us. We don't want to trade him away. And then it's like, oh, well, now the Canucks just got multiple first-round picks. If they had just traded Miller after that playoff run, it would have been awesome. Now, they would have had no reason to do that, but hindsight is 20/20. Maybe Elias Pettersson doesn't get bullied as well. Maybe he's fine. Maybe, if the Canucks just decide after 2024, let's trade Quinn, JT, and EP40, and then we'll let Besser walk the next year, and then we'll re-sign Lindholm and trade him away too. That would have been a really cool turn of events. Now, obviously, like, none of us would have liked that if it happened. But all I'm saying is this is an illustration of declining value within an NHL organization. Quinn Hughes fetched a pretty decent haul. Booyam, Rossi, and the draft pick that became Adam Novotny, not to mention Liam Ogren. But if the Canucks traded Quinn Hughes after he had just won the Norris, they would have gotten a lot more for him. Straight up. Now, maybe it's kind of futile to discuss things like this, but it is illustrating the point that the Vancouver Canucks have not really had things go their way when it comes to actually building value over the past few years, which is why this offseason has been such a breath of fresh air. We just spoke about how Paul Cotter is a guy that replaced Kiefer Sherwood's spot in the lineup. You could talk about Jamie Alexiak replacing Marcus Pettersson's spot in the lineup. Guess what? The Canucks traded those former guys away, and they got some draft picks out of them. Signed some guys in free agency, filled in the roster spot, and boom, adding value. This is what the Canucks need to do, and now they've got a seemingly minimum 10-year path to go out there and potentially do some more damage. So with all that said, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.